If you lead a service operation, you probably know this situation. A customer or user says the service failed, and then the internal explanations begin. Operations says the process ran correctly. IT says the system was available. The supplier says their part was delivered. The team says they followed procedure. And yet the service still failed. So the real question is not only who made a mistake. The deeper question is, what if the organization is managing its functions but not fully managing the service as it is actually experienced? That is where I want to introduce a perspective that I find extremely useful. Inspired by the Servuktion perspective of Paul G. Huppertz, building on the original Servuktion concept by Pierre Egelier and Eric Langjard. And the reason I find it useful is simple. It helps you see the difference between a process that looks fine internally and a service that actually works for the person who calls it. The shift is this. Don't start with the tool. Don't start with the department. Don't start with the process box. Start with the service. Paul's underlying logic is very powerful. Service is a beneficial effect at a service object, says Paul G. Huppertz. So instead of asking, what do we do internally? You ask three much more useful questions. Who is the service consumer? What is the service object? What beneficial effect must be produced? Now, that sounds simple, but once you do that, the whole picture changes. Let's use a simple example. A passenger wants to travel from Zurich to Dubai. From a Servuktion perspective, the service consumer is the passenger. The service object is the passenger's Leben, the person in their physical presence. The beneficial effect is the required change of location from Zurich to Dubai. Now notice what this does. The passenger does not buy check-in plus baggage handling plus boarding plus crew plus catering plus IT plus air traffic control. The passenger expects a specified transportation service, and that means all those other elements are important, very important. But analytically, they are contributions to the service, not automatically the service itself. And that matters for leaderships because the passenger experiences one service transaction, not your org chart. Now, here comes the part that I think is especially helpful for service leaders. In Paul's paper about service concept, he points to the gap logic, the SERVQUAL 5-gap model, Zeithaml, Parasuraman, and Berry. And the beauty of it is this. Between what the service consumer expects and what the service consumer experiences, there are several translation points where the service can drift. Let me put that into plain language. Gap 1. Did we correctly understand what the consumer actually expects? Gap 2. Did we promise what we understood? Gap 3. Did we design the service so that what was understood can actually be delivered? Gap 4. Did operations really deliver what the design required? Gap 5. Did the consumer actually experience the intended service? This is why a service can fail even when several internal units feel they did their part. Most organizations manage the boxes. The service often breaks in the gaps. Now, here is the part I find especially strong. Paul does not stop at saying be more customer-centric or improve the experience. He gives the gaps structural countermeasures, and this is the point where the discussion becomes useful for leadership. If there is a gap between expected and understood, you need an aligned service specification. If there is a gap between understood and promised, you need a Servuktion contract with service specification. If there is a gap between understood and designed, you need a coherent service concept. If there is a gap between designed and delivered, you need a service contribution hierarchy. And if there is a gap between delivered and experienced, you need a service script. And Paul then compresses the service concept into a very usable triad: service specification, service contribution hierarchy, service script. That is a very practical management insight because it tells you that broken service is often not just a people problem, it is a structure problem. Let's go back to the airline. If the passenger does not reach Dubai as required or reaches it too late to do what mattered next, the service has not simply become a bit messy. Something structurally important has failed. And now you can read the situation much more clearly. Was the service specification unclear? Was the promise unclear or over optimistic? Was the service concept incomplete? Were crucial contributions missing or badly orchestrated? Did the real transaction break at the point of experience? Now, leadership has a reading discipline, not just opinions. And this is also why the airline example is so useful. It makes visible that many crucial contributions are partly invisible to the consumer. Ground handling, maintenance, crew allocation, IT, catering, dispatch, de-icing, air traffic coordination, all of them matter. But the passenger still experiences one service transaction. If you are a service leader, this matters because repeated pressure often lands on a person long before the structure is fully carrying. Someone keeps explaining, someone keeps correcting, someone keeps compensating, someone keeps escalating, someone keeps protecting the consumer from the internal mess. That person may look like a high performer, but structurally, that person may also be compensating for under coverage in the service setup. We call that a centurio. And if you want to improve the service, you need to make that readable. Not moralize it, read it. Now add AI. Suppose the airline introduces an AI rebooking agent. Does that automatically mean the service has changed? Not necessarily. What may have changed is the service contribution. The AI can support sorting, prioritizing, recognition, communication, or rebooking. But the real question remains, does it help produce the required beneficial effect for the service consumer at the relevant service object in the real service moment? That is also very close to Paul's later discussion. He explicitly treats AI or AI agents as possible contributors in service delivery, but not as the primary reference point. The reference point remains the consumer's requirements, the change state of the service object, and the service unit that can actually be checked. So capability can change, but the service still has to hold. So here is the practical takeaway. If you lead services, do not only ask, are the teams performing? Are the processes green? Is the tool available? Also ask, what is the actual service? Where can expectation, promise, design, delivery, and experience drift apart? And when they do, who is compensating for the gap? That is the point where service leadership becomes structural. And that is why I find my friend Paul Huppertz's Servuktion perspective so useful. It gives us a better way to read service reality, follow the structure before you blame the person.